So thank you for coming here and thank you for agreeing to listen to us, and a very warm afternoon to each one of you. So today we are going to speak about victimhood, self-awareness and personal accountability, and how that becomes a path to power. I just had a very quick chat with my co-speakers just before we were entering this room, and I believe that quite a lot of emphasis and discussion will come up on a few of these things at least. So I am perhaps going to focus my part of talking more on the self-awareness and personal accountability maybe, but not before I tell you a little bit of my victimhood story. So I believe it is kind of a very common story with many of us women, that and this is something that I borrow from a friend before I go into mine, that one day she told me that for long I have said that this happened with me at the workplace, and this happened with me at my in-laws, and this is what my husband did to me, and this is what my children do to me, etc. And then I dreamed one day that I walk up to heaven, and then somebody stands at the guard at the door and says, okay, so tell me your life story. And I tell them all of it, that they did this to me and this person did this to me, and it's like, wow, what did you do? Frankly, I'm not much of an theist. I'm kind of not a believer even, but this resonated a lot with me, because I, as a storyteller, I am a writer, so I'm essentially a storyteller, and I have lately come to realize that a lot of our life, well-being, ill-being, or whatever you call it, really depends on the stories we tell ourselves. And if we choose to tell ourselves stories in which we are victims, so we will be. For me, I have always been kind of a nerd. I have always studied hard and cracked exams, cracked admission tests, and studied, and I went on to study even while I was working. I'm an actuary by profession. Somehow, as luck would have it, I kind of fell face down unwell about 2.5 years back. So much so that my spine was kind of protruded all throughout. Severe fibromyalgia, major depressive disorder, anxiety disorder, you name it, I had it. Like piles of tests running from this department to another in the hospital, and perhaps 2 dozens of doctors, each trying to fix something and something else breaking. So the liver and the kidney with all the antidepressants and alertness boosters. So all of those stories happened suddenly, kind of, I don't know where they surfaced from, because I felt that I was doing quite well on the game of life. Like, really I was doing okay in terms of the numbers. But somehow deep inside there were some other stories which I was not agreeing to tell myself until they really showed up. So at one point when I went back to my hometown to take a proper, second opinion, or rather the, 27th opinion really, they said that you are really burnt out and you need to take a break. So which is when I had to really come out and tell my office people that I need a sabbatical, I need to just fix my health and come back. It was really unbelievable for me that I wouldn't work even for, frankly, I have really been grown up thinking that what you can do to make your life better in terms of numbers. So I've always had that kind of a psychology. From there I kind of took to bed. Even when I was not working, I was still taking 2 or 3 analgesics a day. I was kind of bedridden. One room in my house is into a physiotherapy center with traction and everything set up. I don't remember how it happened, but at one point in time I had begun to write. I was beginning to write in a way of catharsis perhaps. I was really seeing that I needed to vent it out. So after many years of antidepressants, etc., people told me that close your eyes, and as soon as I would close my eyes and try to meditate, all the thoughts would come in and I needed to really channel them out. So catharsis happened. Soon enough I realized that my stories aren't as unique as I would like them to be, that I am that one piece of snowflake. Not really. It's a very common story, all common fears, common victimhood, common vulnerabilities. Thankfully, and I really do not know where it came from, because I have not really written anything other than PowerPoint slides for the longest time. But maybe I had that thing of writing. Very soon I was named one of the top 10 women bloggers in India. My columns were published with Huffington Post, Times of India, and several other international magazines. I was writing more from a personal front, but it seemed to take into a genre of writing for gender, issues or writing for gender neutral equality. I have a 7-year-old, and if I'm talking about 2 years back, so this is really the time when I was confronting with, you know, every single thing, like what are the toys we give our children, what are the things we are conditioning their minds with. So all of those things came together in my mind, and we're trying to find a vent. So I was really writing everything that came to me, poetry to screenplay to angry feminist columns to whatever. I had written one very, you know, short story which I had written on my way back from office one day, which got made into a film, and things kind of went off the roof. It got selected to be screened at the Cannes Film Festival in 2016. It won quite a few international awards. And then I was actually made an offer to write a book. And I was like, no, I don't even have a manuscript. I cannot write a book. And I know that, you know, even J.K. Rowling gets rejected 12 times before she can write Harry Potter. So, you know, but it did happen. I don't know how. My journey really has been a kind of, you know, string of miracles over the last 2 years. So I, you know, really one day a legal contract landed up on my mail account saying that, you know, you need to write this into a book. I wrote the book. It came out last year. The day it came out on the pre-order link, it went up to number 3 on Amazon, hot and new releases. It has been very, very well accepted. And the thing about, you know, what I really realized is that I hadn't prepared for it. But I was very conscious that if there was one goal for me, I was trying to be authentic and listen to myself, because for the longest time I didn't ever do that. I would just, you know, get up from sleep listening to my alarm clock, and I would just go to office, come back, the salary will hit the bank account on its time, end of the month, I'll get that SMS on time. Things were just rolling on, but I never really stopped to listen or, you know, really do anything about what this is all about. And now, as I think of it in today's session, I think, you know, that self-awareness was the missing piece in the jigsaw. I mean, who was I just being? I mean, very often, and especially in the Indian perspective, we often think that as women, we get lost in our roles as mothers, sisters, brothers, daughter, wife. And in search of self-identity, we often go and say that, okay, so an empowered woman is one who has a work, who is economically empowered, who goes out and works and gets a salary. But frankly speaking, even that is kind of another identity which is as good as any other identity, I felt, because it wasn't really addressing any of my inner emotional needs. It wasn't really asking me or, you know, bringing me in touch back with myself. It was really one of the roles, and I was like a 9-to-5 actuary, or a, you know, 5 to 9 evening wife, or once a week daughter making a phone call to my parents, so on. I mean, frankly, there wasn't really any time in my life where I was stopping and thinking, okay, one life, I don't know what happens after that, so what am I going to do with this? I didn't have any sense of inner peace or outer purpose or anything like that. It was just rolling on. It was just as my parents have handed out a guidebook to me, and I was just following the steps. So frankly, self-awareness is something that doesn't happen with a bang on one sudden day that you grow, you know, you wake up and there's a third eye you develop. But it really did happen with a lot of catastrophe and a lot of suffering, which were kind of unforeseen for me. So once I developed that, in a way, I wouldn't say really I'm self-aware as the word may mean, because it is a long way. We are all, as you know, I was just attending a session by Luvena, who's here right before this, and then as she said, you know, work in progress. We are all work in progress, but I think at least I've taken one step towards it, to ask myself that question. It is important to acknowledge that the question exists, and it is important to, you know, try to take that step towards it rather than just going with the flow. At times, going with the flow is good, but we often lose ourselves in the flow, and that is exactly what was happening with me. Personal accountability. And coming to that, I actually, you know, stumbled upon this word quite a lot, because accountability, I have been very dutiful and accountable for sure. I can vouch for it myself, because I've always been accountable to my parents every time I went to appear for an exam and come back with a mark sheet and show them that, you know, I hope I have made you proud, or do everything else, like to my boss or to everybody else. I think personal accountability perhaps should mean something slightly different. I mean, when did I really tell myself that, okay, this is something that I have done for you? I mean, right. And that is exactly where, you know, I never really stopped and thought about until very recently. So, and to me, personal accountability kind of conflicted head on with a certain other kinds of accountability or dutifulness I had towards other people. Because in order to make them happy in the way they believe they can be happy, I really had to perform, achieve, and go on. I mean, I had to appear on time for my parent-teachers meeting for my daughter, or at the social gatherings with my husband, or at the office, meetings and parties. And frankly, I may sound like I'm venting, and I am, but even though I have taken a conscious step away from it over the last 2 years, I still at times get up with that feeling that I suddenly have even dreams where my most frequent dream is that I'm still running late for office. Because there was always that kind of rush inside me, which is still working in me in a subconscious way. So, so much for, the self-awareness and personal accountability. I feel the need to tell ourselves that we are accountable to ourselves first, and that there is a self beyond the roles we play in our life has been one of the most revealing facts in my life. And I thought that this might also be a good opportunity for me to talk slightly about my book, Elixir, which, as they say, the first question anyone asks a first-time author is that autobiographical? It is not, but in a way it also is, because frankly, by the time of your first book, you are hardly matured enough to try to manufacture emotions. You can only borrow from what you have felt already inside yourself. So I only have that reservoir to, pull from. So this story again is about a woman just like me on her way back from office one day. She enters a coffee shop, and she again is kind of, churning in her mind, what really am I doing with my own life? She enters this coffee shop, she asks for a cup of coffee, and she also asks for a glass of water. Now the water she is given is not water, it is elixir. Now that night onwards, that night when she falls asleep, she wakes up in that coffee shop. And from that night onwards, every night, as soon as she falls asleep, she wakes up in another life. And she falls asleep and comes back here, so she lives 2 lives. And while this life is full of the things that I have been talking about, maybe victimhood, maybe trying to find yourself, but somewhere in that parallel life, nothing much changes. She only needs to lose things, not really gain anything that she already did not have. She did have quite a few things here. She had all the material successes, she had the trophies, she had a nice house, car, etc. But in that other life, she really loses things to be able to find herself back, because frankly, we all are suffering from the choice of, the problem of plenty. So she really, step by step, goes back to herself. And she, from being a victim, now rises up to the cause of herself. So I actually, when my publisher finally, the book would go for the, print run, and he asked me that, give me the front material with the dedication, etc. So I said that right here I say that I dedicate the book. I wrote this book for myself, and more than anything else, many of my readers have first opened this page and said that, okay, this is a profound dedication statement that we haven't seen before, that I wrote this book for myself. And I, as much as I have tried to be a good daughter or a good mother or a good wife, I really stand by this statement. I don't think I could have done it for anybody else. I really wrote this for myself. So I thought that a good way of, just drawing a close on my portion of the speech would be to read out just 2 paragraphs from my book, which might maybe apply to any of us, or, you might see how it turns out. So I'll just read a bit of the book. Sipping in coffee, Manisha thinks of herself, of her life. Lately, she has been thinking about it a lot, how her life has come down to moving along in circles, days, months, years. She goes to work and then she comes back when it is time. She comes back to the house, waiting for the time to go back to work again. She stops by too, of course. Why? She stops by at the stores, at the supermarkets, the shopping malls, at the bank, doctor's cabin, train stations, airport, hometown. She goes back from one point to another, by the hands of the clock, by the pages of the calendar, in rounds and rounds. She feels like a shadow in her own life, barely there. Is this what every life is fated to be? Is this their life's sole destiny, to just live this halfway? To make an image out of conjoined expectations and then to spend a whole lifetime just trying to keep at it? These awards, these foreign travels, this inane rush for the next party, next award, next promotion, they mean so little to her anymore. The world is so full of people, and yet each of them is so acutely alone, shelled in their own cases, lonely. Can they not see it? This race against each other at the end of annual appraisals, the anxiety at the meetings, the fake smiles at the social gatherings, dressing up for show, shopping to keep up the pace, to keep the show running. This traffic there, the serpentine blink of red angry eyes, these people, do they ever stop and ask, reflect, introspect? Do they ever wonder what it is they are waiting for, rushing at, speeding down to? Do they stop to breathe in flowers even once? Maybe one day, someday, everyone should get a chance to break their cycle, even if just for once. Do something brave, daring, or maybe just funny, something out of the way, unusual, shameful, scandalous, stupid, cringe-worthy, callous. They'll drop their defenses, their roles to play, their masks. They'll have none to impress, none to oblige, none to disappoint, and none to owe to. And then perhaps they'll all find their way back home, one by one. They'll swallow their pride and their shame and their ego. They'll give it all up only if it helps to live instead, to arrive. Thank you. Thank you so much. So next is Minku. I'll hand over the stage to her, and I look forward to your wonderful session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sinjani. Often when you're a new wearer of spectacles, you kind of wonder whether you want to see the audience or you want to see what you wrote. And seriously, I think this is my first ever time I'm going to be putting my vanity pocket on the side and go with the spectacles. Yeah, this intense. If you see this today, it's definitely, even in the video, it's definitely going to be, one of those boomerang sessions. Okay, so we are actually. I'm glad we lightened up the intensity of this topic today, because seriously, I think we've all been wronged, harmed, mistreated. I have not come across anyone, really, who hasn't been a victim one time or the other. You could be a victim of the government, you're a victim of how your parents treated you and how you got conditioned. You could be, came across a rapist, a murderer, you got hit by a car. Sooner or later, we've all been victims, and who is a victim is obviously someone who was powerless, helpless, and got caught in circumstances beyond their control, right? So you become a victim whether you like it or not. And of course, victims, you could be a serious victim, and you could be a victim of psychological victim, which you don't realize, but the intensity of damage is pretty deep. Because sooner or later, even though psychological, all the time when your parents said you were not good enough, right? It's going to manifest as you grow up. And in fact, they usually say that the perpetrators are usually people who have been conditioned such when they were growing up. Now, why did I choose this topic? It's an intense topic, but I gravitated to it, and I'll tell you this. That I have personally probably been a victim of not as serious as a lot of people go through, rapes, but psychological destruction is a major destruction. I grew up feeling I was not good enough. I grew up a volatile relationship. And the beauty of these sessions, and I have to tell you this, what touches me is how you can come up here and bare your soul. Seriously, and that is really beautiful. I came up here with like all this because I had a sister, I had a mother, and they were both went through victimhood in every sense possible, which led to depression, and I don't have them in my life anymore. So here I'm going to present things to you from a perspective of being victimized by circumstances that were beyond me, and how I wish as a daughter, as a sister, I could have done so much more. So I think I'm coming from a perspective of awareness today, and I did do a lot of research, so bear with me. And if you want to take down some statistics, I have been shocked by things that I've realized about victimhood and being victimized. So if you want to grab some paper, just feel free to. So you become a victim without even realizing. A drunk slams into your car, you're a victim, and you wonder where you're going to go with it. You could be sexually assaulted in a relationship. Yeah, it's another story where they're always going to blame the woman for being the one who enticed, the one who probably said no in a domestic violence situation. She said no, and the man did not understand. And the man is portrayed as this lusty guy who absolutely had no bearings and no control on his reflexes. But the point here is that a no is a no, and so it does not give the assailant a right to indulge in acts that are not given permission for. So I actually wanted to say that victims, whether we realize it or not, are of different kinds. You have sexually abused children, right? You have rape, murder victims. You have mentally ill adults who are taken advantage of. And what about, aren't we victims of corporate greed? All those genetically modified foods they're trying to feed us, right? What about the banks, the fraudulent scams to take away the money from your banks? I think the more serious ones, repeated domestic violence, which I know I've talked to a lot of friends, a lot of women go through this, but hey, there is this kind of bracket of minor guilt. It is something that you need to take, you need to be aware. You need to understand there's a pattern in domestic violence, and you have to be accountable to be able to get out of it, right? Okay, so now victimhood. Let's move on. We've understood what a victim is. We all know that. Let's differentiate what is a victimhood, okay? While victimhood deserves empathy, right? It deserves support. And I know that it is accompanied by a lot of internal shame, and a lot of resurrection happens. But I think victimhood has to go hand in hand with self-awareness. How? Now, if you are going to use your story to reach out to the masses, and it takes a lot of bravery and courage to say, hey, this happened to me, okay? This happened to me, and I bring this across to you because please learn from my experiences. But then again, on the other end, it's very funny because all shows of Oprah Winfrey and all those forums, everyone's leapfrogging to say, hey, this happened to me and that happened to me, and it's really a waste of time because seriously, if you're looking at those 15 minutes of fame, that's not self-awareness, and that's not the reason why you need to even bear what's happened to you in an exaggerated fashion, right? Okay, so let's move on to how does this awareness come into play? I want to add, why did I go into these? It might seem a little mundane at times, but this is status. I look back and see what is it that my mother, my sister could have done. What is it that I, standing there, if you have people in the house who are victims, or you're a victim, or say you know there's a person in the house who's a depression patient, what is it that perhaps that you did not watch for? What is it that you did not recognize? What is it that you could have done? So sometimes it's too late, right? They're gone, and then you realize. But that is a time when I was feeling victimized myself because I'd lost 2 family members, and it takes you a lifetime to recover from that. And I really, really have worked so hard on myself to not get into that blame game, right? That gets us all, and also not to feel a victim myself. So I'm going to come back to say, we need to be very aware, and it's shocking that in the US, I'll start with US and then I'll come to India, 88% of murders happen by the people they knew. 88%. Okay? And guess, so these are, so what message is it showing us? That violence at home is not an exception. Really, it is all, it is in fact a rule that we live by. And guess what, in India, it's 90%. It was either a relative or a neighbor or your employer. Did you know that? It's shocking. It's really shocking. Yeah. So my question to you is, and I need a little participation here, do you think victims are made or are they born? Okay. You think they're made? So we're looking at we're looking at the socio-political system where governments, you say the women or the minorities or the disabled, they target that. What about the familial economic environment that we as mothers, as family members, are providing to the youngsters, right? So as I said before, all of this, and then what about TV? TV, it all says, it comes across saying violence is okay to resolve conflicts. Is it? Really? You know, that's not the way to go. What about our cartoons? Recently, a strain of parents are coming up and saying that, hey, cartoons like Jack and Jill went up the hill. These are violent messages to kids. So guys, ladies, we empowered ladies, let's wake up. Let's wake up and look at life a little differently. Let's look at the basics under. What are we doing to the sons, the daughters at home? Are we working towards either making them victims, weak in their own form, or are we looking at making them as perpetrators? Personal accountability, I'd like to touch upon that a little bit more, okay? What did Tao Tzu say? He says, knowing others is wisdom, but knowing yourself is enlightenment. Okay, so let's really look at what we're doing in life. Personal accountability, yes. It unlocks, this is very important, it unlocks door to healing and well-being. So basically, you are a victim, fine. Now, what are you going to do about it? You have to take personal accountability. You have to walk the talk, okay? Yes, there's traumas, there's wounds, we understand, but you cannot keep falling back into victimhood story. You cannot keep going back. You cannot be indulging in the blame game and saying she is responsible for how I feel. They might be initially responsible, but what are you doing towards healing yourself, right? Okay, so I understand the empathy, the compassion. Yes, it's difficult times that they went through, but we have to move out of this victimhood story, right? Okay. Also understand, psychologically, when we are emotionally triggered, there is a tendency to go back to your old pattern, right? You will go back to your old pattern to feel sorry for yourself, and that's what you have to be really careful about, not to fall back. Now, if you want self-empowerment? You want to lead yourself to the path of power? What do you need to do? You need to stop being we, always inclusive. We need to stop being psychic sponges. I actually love that word. Psychic sponges, because we keep taking on so much of emotions, okay? And so we need to stop being psychic sponges, right? There is actually no self-concept. You are pure light. Okay, so this concept that you create, that your parents created for you when you were growing up, you were being conditioned, it's actually there is no self-concept. Also, let's pledge again to stop the blame game. Let's forgive ourselves. Yeah? Let's forgive ourselves. Let's replace the fear. Let's replace the fear with love. Okay? Now, I just want to say here that everything that you do, moving away from the role of victim to becoming aware. Are you a victim? Are you victimizing someone? How are you aware, and how are you going to reform that hurt, the tragedy that's happened to you? It's all in your hands. Okay? Self-awareness, be aware of yourself is all I can say. Every time you slip from the path of personal accountability, you know, I've learned this and I apply it beautifully. Ask yourselves 3 whys. Why? By the time you indulge in the 3rd why, the answers come to you. What are you doing what you're doing? What aren't you doing, and why are you not doing it? Okay, so that's a beautiful way to always stay aware of what you're doing. Define your values. Okay, define your values and who you are. My takeaway from my experiences in life is if I know all of this, and if I can help someone who has gone through a traumatic time, I think my purpose of life is done. I just wanted to share with you, I just have one last thing to share. I don't know if you've heard of Phyllis Crystal. Okay, Phyllis Crystal teaches you about the ties that bind you. Okay, it is been the most miraculous thing that's ever happened to me. You start to cut ties with your traumas. Okay, and have you heard about it? Yeah. So you cut ties with your traumas, and that's really what I have done. Not to feel like I'm the victim of every tragedy in the family. I'm the victim to a volatile relationship with my dad. You know, all of a sudden, if you start feeling so strong a victim, you are actually going to be very alone. You get left, and believe me when I say this, no matter who claims to love you, in the end, you yourself have to walk the path and feel cheerful. I'm very happy I can smile today. I feel love, just universal love. And I'm always there to help whoever wants help. And any one of us, once we are aware of this, if you can reach out to a neighbor, to a friend, a family, and be there for them, I think our purpose is done. Thank you so much for listening to me and giving me this opportunity for sharing my views and bearing my soul. Thank you. Thank you so much. Michelle Moras. It was lovely meeting you, and I invite you to take over the podium next. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I need to use the mic? No?
It's
good.
I only needed it because I needed to put
Your paper down?
in my glasses.
Well, change is an emotional journey. It's uncomfortable, but it makes you evaluate who you truly are. And the beauty is in the possibilities. I gave you that card in front of you. It's the big yellow card. It's one of the quotes from me in my book, because I also wrote a book. And it's called It's Not Luck, Overcoming You. When you read that title, Victimhood, Self-Awareness, and Personal Accountability, A Path to Power, I'm the poster child. Everything she spoke about, everything you spoke about, I've experienced. I'll start closer to today, and I'll move backwards. In 2014, I was in a car accident where I obtained a traumatic brain injury. A traumatic brain injury means I have 4 areas of my brain I should be non-functioning, but here I am. For 8 months, I could not speak. You've met me, I like to talk. I could not speak. And so I was trapped in my head with that inner critic. Who has an inner critic? Who has more than one? When you get locked in your head and you can't speak, it takes over you. And it's cruel and it's evil. And everything that you ever heard negative in your life comes back. And for the 8 months, I was being tortured by myself. In that time, I wrote questions to myself. Now here's the thing. I have no frontal lobe, I have no brain on the left side. The back of my brain and my 2 hemispheres are no longer connected. When I couldn't speak in those 8 months, my left brain was arguing with my right brain. When I wrote notes to myself, granted they're kind of gibberish, if you try to read it, it wouldn't make sense, but I can understand it. I would say, you're useless, you lost your voice because you have nothing to say. And then in another handwriting, it would even be slanted a different way. No, you're not. You're better than this. You can do this. You can fight. I had 2 different voices talking. And I wrote them down in this journal of mine. Journaling is important. Please journal. Now, last year, I guess I should let you know, I got better. I still have brain damage. But because I kept working towards it, my neurons switched. My brain does not light up like a normal person's anymore. It has rewired itself. But in that time period when the doctors told me you may never speak again, the doctors said you will never probably gain your memories of the past. Do you think victimhood came into play? I thought the world hated me, the universe hated me, and God must just loathe me. Victimhood. But one day I was sitting in my room and I realized I wanted to die. I'm a very loving life person, and I would rather die than be trapped in my head. And I said, why do you hate me so much? Then kill me. I don't care what you do to my body, just give me back my brain, please. And I heard a voice. Get up, you're not dead yet. And I'm serious, it was a booming voice. Get up. So I did. And I'm like, okay, well, what am I going to do? I couldn't even use a computer, but I found a way. I just started to move. And that's the secret with coming out of any kind of victimhood. Take one tiny step every day. And every day, even though I didn't even know I was doing it, my unconscious mind was doing something different every day. And it was forcing my brain to rewire itself. And here I am. Fast forward another year. These things are just bags of flat. I didn't need them anymore. I could buy a new one. I did.
He's the good guy who understands them.
He was another one, but it's okay.
But that's the thing. Again, I could have said, woe is me. Why me? But I didn't. That's that victimhood mentality. I went woe is me with the brain injury. When it came to breast cancer, it's like, now what do you want me to do? This must be some sort of message. Everything has a lesson, doesn't it? So where's the lesson in the pain? The lesson in the pain was, you are a woman. Hear you roar. You were given back your voice, then use it. You don't need your shell. You need your mind. Move forward. And since then, I wrote this book. Now here's the funny thing. You know what this book is? It's the notes between my left hemisphere and my right hemisphere when I was suffering through my brain injury. When I had my breast cancer and I was cut completely up and I couldn't move, I was going through my journal and I was writing again. When I flipped through, I'm like, whose handwriting is this? I have 4 years of engineering. I have meticulous handwriting. That was not my handwriting. but it was me. So I took all these notes and I'm reading through them, and it helped me get through my breast cancer. And I went, well, why don't I put it in a book? It apparently was written for a reason, so I put it in a book and I put stories in it. I gave you all the cards, and I'm teaching a lesson on this book if you want to. It's on Amazon. But when you go through it, you're going to read and say, oh, the stories are so cute. And then you're going to get to the questions. Why is she asking us hard questions? Which is why I'm doing a mastermind. You can find me and find out if you want me to walk you through that process. Now, how am I so energetic and happy? Here's the real story. I think the reason why I made it through all the things I did as an adult was because as a child, I was the daughter of a victim. My mother was a victim. And I watched as a child my mother being victimized. And when I got old enough, my father would say, I said, Daddy, when I grow up, I'm going to be an astronaut. And he didn't know you're not. But Daddy, when I grow up, I want to be a doctor. No, you're not. Daddy, I want to sing. I want to be a singer. You can't sing. I got accepted into MIT at 16. And I said, Dad, look at my MIT letter. I got into MIT. And he said, why would you take a good spot from a man who needs to feed his family? Don't even think about it. And then he said, you're short, fat, and ugly. You're only going to be barefoot and pregnant. And the world opens up for beautiful people, and girlfriend, you are not beautiful. Shortly after that, he kicked me out of the house. Now you have to remember, at 16, 17, I'm in college now. I'm in college. I've gotten to University of Nebraska. I'm in engineering, and I'm in a man's world. There were only 2 females in that entire course, just us. And so I have that story in the book, so I won't go into deep on that. But going into my senior year of college, I was in 4 jobs, because my dad kicked me out, 4 jobs, and working at school full time. I had a job at a restaurant, and at the restaurant at night, I was the only young person with a house of my own. So when they all wanted to go somewhere, they were like, let's not go with our parents, let's go to your place. I said, okay, well, I'll go to my place. Well, we all come to my place. I said, now remember, you have to be gone by 1 because I need at least 4 hours of sleep, so I have to be at my my banking job at 7 in the morning. I have to leave at 6. Okay, everybody's fine. Well, they all come to my house, and someone brings the new guy. And we all have a good time, and I keep getting this feeling that the new guy is wrong. You know when you get that instinct and you just kind of blow it off? I blew it off. Everyone leaves, and at about, let's say 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, it's the new guy. And I said, what are you doing here? Go away. I didn't even open the door. He said, I forgot my jacket in your room, in your house. I looked in my closet. I don't see anything. I don't see anything. It's above you. He put it on the shelf. So I opened the door. I'm a college student. I have no furniture. I can't climb. I'm 5 foot. I can't climb. I have nothing. So I opened the door to let him get it in. He goes, he gets his jacket, and he jumps over the couch. He turns on the TV, and I don't know how many know there's a TV show, Bad Boys, what you gonna do?
What you gonna do when they come for you?
And he says, what would you do if you saw me on that TV? And I said, I'd act like I didn't see you on the TV. And he says, that's good. And from his jacket, he pulled a gun. And he guided me to the chair, where he proceeded to rape me with that gun. Now, in that moment, I tried to fight. But I'm 5 foot. And he was a big boy. And in the middle of all that chaos, one of the first thoughts was, why me? The second thought was, I'm going to be barefoot and pregnant. I'm ugly. I have nothing. I'm never going to go to college. This is maybe where I'm supposed to be. When he finally left me around 2:30 in the morning, I crawled to the phone. I called the police and I said, help me, help me. And they said, why would you waste the police time with your he said, she said crap? I called back. Help me, please. Are you bleeding? Just a little bit. Did he leave anything on you? No, he raped me with the gun. Oh, yeah. So I went to the bathroom, because I have to be at work in 3 hours. And I took Ajax, you know, the scrubbing, Ajax, a Brillo pad, and ammonia. And I cleaned my body to try to get that off of me, because I had to get to work. So I got to work. Remember, I'm only 18 now. I'm paying for everything on my own. I drive to work, and I get to the bank, and I say, help me, to my boss. Help me. I think I was raped. And I didn't know if it was rape because he raped me with a gun. And she said, how dare you, lazy teenager, come to work 10 minutes late. I told him not to hire you. Again, shut down. After that job, I go to my mother and I said, Mom, I bad things happened. I think I was raped. And she said, were you? Yeah, well, and he raped me. And she said, you should be so happy that a man loves you so much. Some men love that way. And I remember thinking, I don't want that life.